What if I told you that the very moment you stop pretending, the moment you decide to live fully as yourself, someone will turn against you? Not because you hurt them, not because you did anything wrong, but because your truth threatened their comfort. It's unsettling, isn't it? You step into your authenticity hoping for freedom, peace, maybe even support. And instead, what shows up? Resistance, pushback, criticism from the very people you thought would stand beside you. You're not picking a fight. You're not causing trouble, you're just being real. But somehow, that becomes the threat. Most of us were taught to keep our heads down. Don't make waves. Stay agreeable. But the truth is, the moment you stop shrinking to fit someone else's version of you, the moment you decide to take a stand for what matters, opposition becomes part of the path. That brings me to a quote from Winston Churchill. He once said, "You have enemies? Good. That means you have stood up for something sometime in your life." Let that sink in for a second. Enemies do not always appear because you did something wrong. Sometimes they show up because you did something right, because you refused to shrink yourself to fit someone else's expectations, because you took a risk, because you spoke your truth. If you have ever wondered, why do I have enemies? You are in the right place. And today, we are going to unpack why that is not a bad thing. In fact, it might be one of the clearest signs that you are growing. We will explore how having enemies can actually push you forward, how to turn resistance into strength, and how to reflect on these experiences without letting negativity dictate your path. If that sounds like the clarity you need, let us dive in. It is a fair question. Why do you have enemies? Most of us are not out there actively looking for conflict. We do not wake up thinking about how to provoke resistance or stir opposition. In fact, many of us go out of our way to avoid unnecessary drama. So why does it still happen? The answer is simple, but also deeply powerful. You have enemies because, at some point, you stood for something. You drew a line in the sand. You made a decision to choose growth over comfort. You refused to sit quietly when your heart, your mind, or your values told you it was time to speak, act, or change direction. It might feel uncomfortable, but this is often how life works. Growth and resistance are deeply connected. You cannot expand, evolve, or create meaningful change without disturbing something. You cannot express your authentic self without upsetting someone who prefers you silent, small, or predictable. History shows us this pattern over and over. The people who create lasting impact are rarely the ones everyone agrees with. Think about leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Nelson Mandela, or even modern innovators like Elon Musk. The moment you challenge routine thinking, the moment you disrupt the status quo, resistance appears. But that resistance is not random. It reveals something crucial about your path. It shows that your presence, your choices, and your words carry weight. They make people take notice. They spark emotion, whether it is admiration or disapproval. In other words, you are no longer invisible. Now, here is the part most people avoid talking about. It is incredibly easy to avoid enemies. All you have to do is stop growing, stop expressing your true beliefs, stay small, agreeable, quiet, and predictable. Blend into the background. Do what is expected, and no one will oppose you. But what is the price of that comfort? What is the hidden cost of keeping the peace at the expense of your potential? You might avoid conflict, but you also avoid growth. You avoid purpose. You avoid the satisfaction of knowing your life made a difference. So ask yourself honestly, are you willing to live unnoticed, shrinking yourself to avoid making waves? Or would you rather step forward, knowing that not everyone will like it, but understanding that your life will carry meaning, direction, and impact? This brings us back to Churchill's words. He said, "You have enemies? Good. That means you have stood up for something, sometime in your life." There is wisdom hidden in those words. They remind us that opposition is often a sign of movement, of progress, of personal evolution. Having enemies is not necessarily a mark of failure. In many cases, it is proof that you are stepping into your power. It means you are participating fully in life. You are shaping your world, rather than simply existing in it. And here is the good news. You do not have to let enemies define you. You do not have to let opposition discourage you. Instead, you can let it sharpen your focus, strengthen your resolve, and remind you why your voice, your vision, and your values matter. Conflict. It is a word most of us instinctively avoid. It feels uncomfortable. It feels confrontational. But what if it also reveals something deeper? What if having enemies is not automatically a sign of failure, but a sign of movement? A sign that you disrupted the comfortable patterns people have settled into. Think about it. Growth demands discomfort. Progress often challenges people's beliefs, routines, even their insecurities. So when you push yourself forward, some will resist. Not always because you hurt them, but because your evolution reminds them of their own stagnation. Have you ever noticed that the louder your voice becomes, the more silence unsettles others? That when you stand for something, those sitting quietly often feel exposed. This is where enemies emerge. Sometimes not as clear villains, but as critics, doubters, or those who simply misunderstand your intentions. But here's the truth. Their resistance is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is your integrity, your growth, your ability to stand firm in what matters to you. That is why having enemies is not a bad thing. It often means you are walking the necessary but uncomfortable path of authenticity. So maybe the better question is not how do I avoid enemies, but how do I grow through them? We will explore that next. But for now, pause and reflect. If everyone agrees with you, supports you, or stays silent, are you truly standing for anything meaningful? As Churchill reminds us, you have enemies? Good. It means your voice, your decisions, and your courage left a mark. How do you take those enemies? The critics, the doubters, even the ones who seem determined to work against you. And how do you transform that resistance into something that actually fuels your growth? It begins with a question worth asking. What does their resistance reveal about your journey? Sometimes, enemies are not just standing in your way. Sometimes, they are proof that you are moving forward. Their discomfort, their criticism, and even their opposition can be a reflection that your actions have disturbed the comfort zone people tend to live in. That means you are making progress. Other times, enemies reveal something deeper within you. Their words or actions might stir up insecurities you thought you had buried. They might awaken doubts you were trying to ignore. It can feel uncomfortable, even painful. But discomfort is often the first sign that growth is happening. And then there are moments when enemies serve as a test of your resolve. They challenge you to get clearer about your beliefs, to strengthen your confidence, to decide with greater certainty what you stand for and why. At that point, you have a choice. You can allow their resistance to make you smaller, to silence your voice, to push you into hiding for the sake of keeping the peace. Or you can let their presence sharpen you. You can choose to let their criticism remind you to stay grounded. You can let their doubts motivate you to prepare, to improve, to rise above the noise. Imagine what it would feel like if every criticism, every challenge, even every betrayal became a quiet reminder that you are growing stronger, that you are becoming clearer in your purpose and bolder in your actions. It will never be easy, but true growth rarely is. So ask yourself, will you allow your enemies to hold you back, or will you allow them to help you grow? We will explore that further. But first, let us reflect on how to apply this practically in your life. Let us bring this concept down to something simple, but deeply powerful. Think about one enemy in your life right now. That word might sound extreme, but your enemy does not have to be someone plotting your downfall. It could be a person who constantly criticizes you. It might be someone who doubts your abilities or questions your choices. It could even be a system, an obstacle, or an unfair situation that feels like it is working against you. Now pause and really reflect on this. Ask yourself, what truth of mine does this opposition reveal? What value am I standing up for that seems to create tension or pushback? Is it your ambition, your boundaries, your desire for something better? Often, the presence of resistance points directly to something meaningful you are defending. Next, ask yourself, how is this shaping me into someone stronger? It is easy to feel discouraged when people question you or when obstacles keep appearing. But each challenge has the potential to build resilience, clarity, and confidence. Every time you stand tall in the face of resistance, you become someone a little more capable, a little more grounded, a little more prepared for what comes next. Enemies are not always villains hiding in the shadows. Sometimes they are simply uncomfortable reminders that you are evolving. Their resistance shines a light on the areas where you are changing, growing, or stepping into a version of yourself that not everyone will immediately accept. It can feel unsettling at times, but growth often requires exactly that kind of discomfort. Take a moment and sit with these questions. Notice how your perspective shifts when you stop seeing enemies as obstacles and start recognizing them as mirrors reflecting your progress. In the next part, we will talk about when opposition crosses the line and becomes truly toxic, and how to navigate that with wisdom. Let us be honest. Not every enemy is a noble signal that you are growing or evolving. Some situations go beyond healthy resistance. Some people cross boundaries. They manipulate. They undermine your confidence. They stir unnecessary chaos. Or worse, they drain your energy and damage your peace of mind. This is where wisdom becomes essential. Standing your ground for your values does not mean standing still in harm's way. Growth is important, but so is protecting your well-being. You can be committed to your purpose without allowing toxic influences to take root in your life. It is okay to set boundaries. It is okay to distance yourself from people or environments that consistently bring harm. You do not owe anyone unlimited access to your time, your energy, or your emotional space. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is walk away. Winston Churchill's words remind us to stand up for something meaningful. But standing up does not mean staying in situations where you are constantly diminished or disrespected. There is a difference between healthy resistance that sharpens you and toxic conflict that drains you. That is the key distinction, Ask yourself honestly, are the enemies you face pushing you to grow stronger, to clarify your purpose, to build resilience? Or are they simply distractions that keep you stuck in cycles of negativity and frustration? Knowing the difference gives you power. Power to decide which battles deserve your energy and which ones you release for the sake of your peace. Growth is never about tolerating abuse. It is about recognizing where opposition fuels your evolution and where it only leads to unnecessary suffering. Let's take this reflection one step further. What if having enemies is not really about becoming the villain in someone else's story, but about stepping into the role of the hero in your own? The reality is, people might mislabel you. They may not understand your choices or your growth. Some will resist your evolution, some will question your motives, and others may call you difficult or rebellious. They might say you have changed, and in truth, you have. But here is what matters. Different does not mean wrong. Rebellious does not mean weak. And being seen as difficult often signals the start of real transformation. Progress rarely makes others comfortable, especially when it disrupts the status quo. History reminds us of this. Most heroes are not recognized in the moment they take a stand. Their courage unsettles people. Their strength feels threatening. But after the dust settles, their actions make sense. Their resilience is seen for what it was all along. So ask yourself honestly, are you willing to be misunderstood today in order to become the person you are meant to be tomorrow? Growth asks for discomfort. It invites resistance. But your journey belongs to you, not to their labels. Before we close, let's zoom out for a moment. Enemies only exist because courage exists. They appear when you decide to stop blending in, when you create boundaries, when you rise toward your next level of growth. So if you have enemies right now, that is not necessarily a sign of failure. In fact, as Winston Churchill reminded us, it is a sign that you have stood for something. You made a choice. You challenged the patterns. You dared to disrupt what others have settled into. But here is the real decision you face. Will you let resistance define you? Will you let the opinions of others shape your worth? Or will you let their criticism refine you, sharpen your perspective, and strengthen your path? If this message speaks to you, share your story in the comments. Have you ever faced opposition simply for standing in your truth? Have someone's words or doubts ever made you question your direction? We want to hear your reflections. Here at Quautive, every video is created to help you pause, reflect, and grow. Our goal is to help you see challenges for what they are and help you reclaim your power along the way. Your enemies do not define your story, but your response to them, that shapes everything. Thank you for sharing this space with us. Keep standing tall, keep choosing growth, and never be afraid of making a few enemies, especially if it means becoming the version of yourself you were always meant to be.